Welcome to ReReview, where we watch movies from our past with a perspective from today. Your hosts are Matt, Bobby, and Austin, and we love the films from our youth, so we're taking a look back to see if they still hold up. On this episode, we're discussing Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It was released in 1989, directed by Steven Spielberg. It stars Harrison Ford, Sean Connery, Alison Doody, and John Rhys-Davies. It's the third movie in the series, and it's really taking us on the most harrowing adventure yet. Now, this is a fair warning. We're spoiling a 34-year-old movie, so if you haven't seen it, we will be revealing key plot points. I mean, my first question right now, I'll throw it to you, Matt. What changed? What happened here between 1, 2, and 3? What changed? Are the writers different? Did they get better? Just everything? Did Steven Spielberg take like a one of those things that makes your brain go faster, neurotropic or something? What happened here?
He took the limitless drug.
Yes.
I don't know. It's weird because you do notice it right off the bat. Like the opening sequence is so much more different than what you got in Temple of Doom, and the energy is just so much better. Like even like the way that they're using the cameras are better. Like even though there's not like a huge amount of dialogue in that opening sequence, it just gets you in the right mode, and it does so many things because it, tells an origin story of Indiana Jones in a way. It shows kind of his inspirations for a lot of the things that he did, sets up a lot of character traits that you find, either already know about, like the snakes, for example. I kind of dogged on it with the whole whip thing with the scar, but it sets up where he gets the whip from, potentially, or where he gets the inclination to use whips. It sets up, for this movie, the relationship with his father. Don't
forget his fashion style.
Like it sets up so much stuff in this one sequence that.
But he already loved museums.
Yeah, but I mean, it just everything clicked in it more so than even I think Raiders did. Raiders was still really good, and it set up a lot of things that you kind of needed to know about his character and about what the movie was going to go. But this kind of went to the next level, and we got none of that in Temple of Doom. Temple of Doom, it was just kind of a throwaway sequence. It didn't really tell you anything about his character. It didn't, bleed over into the rest of the story. And yeah, the Cross of Cortez didn't really have anything to do with the rest of the movie, but it did set up the relationship with the father and where he kind of came from. And that kind of informed a lot of the things that happened in this movie. And you didn't get that in Temple of Doom. You at least got some aspects of that in, Raiders in its beginning. So it's just, it's, kind of like Windows, right? Every other version of Windows is good, and the one in between is just kind of whatever.
But I mean, even thinking about the first film and understanding what we cared about from an indie perspective, this one, I think getting it starting off with River Phoenix and seeing the young Indy, I think my initial question was, did they have plans to, maybe make movies with River Phoenix or do something with River Phoenix? Because the energy was there, like you said, and everything that they go through with the train scene and all of that just felt right. Bobby, how did you feel about it?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it felt right to me too. And I mean, I think to answer your question, it's certainly reasonable that I think they would have thought of that because it worked. Whether they would have tried to do a spinoff of Indiana Jones with him entirely and do other stuff, that would have been an interesting conversation. But I mean, I agree with Matt. I think the opening was really well done. It was really interesting. It was exciting. It was fun to watch. So I thought it started off really great.
I mean, I feel like the what was it? The Cross of Cortez? What was it called? It helps so much to kind of show Indy's drive, right? So we cut to him being an adult and he's on the ship and he's still after the same thing. And we have the same hobbled man in his white suit who's like, this is mine to keep. And Indy's trying to take it away from him. And I mentioned it. I love that entire boat scene because of the sheer amount of water they were pouring on these poor actors and stuntmen. I was very impressed by all of that. But I think it was a lot of, there was maybe only one part, and Matt, you mentioned this and I agree with it, where every set piece they were doing, there was a good flow to it, just either from the way they approached the dialogue to the action scenes. And maybe at most, as we get closer to the end of the film, when we get into the tank scene, that one dragged just a bit. But outside of that, it kept everything going in a way that I maintain interest. And I don't know, I feel like I've seen this movie so many times, it didn't change that I was enjoying everything that we were watching. I guess that could lead me to ask, when was the first time you see this? Did you actually see this as a kid? I know for me, I think this was a USA watch for me. Like I said, the others as well.
I feel like it's probably the same for me. I probably saw this on USA first. I think maybe you had mentioned like this was like I think this might have been the first one that I saw.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw the other ones after. So like the chronology kind of evaded me when I was younger. I mean, apparently it evaded some people too with Temple of Doom and its placement, but yeah, this was definitely at a home watch. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen this in a theater. I would love to see it in a theater. I think, especially I can imagine if they had like the original stock and everything and they're able to get like a really good master out of it, seeing it in like, a modern day, huge, RPX screen or whatever that you would see nowadays in, big megaplexes.
I actually watched it in the theater last year for Father's Day.
Oh, nice.
It was an awesome movie to watch on Father's Day. And I watched it in the theaters during its original run.
All right, old man. Well, I mean, that's kind of key. No, that's awesome that you're able to see it then and really here we are so much later in life and being able to watch this and knowing full well that they're still bringing out more indie movies, and I can't wait till we talk about the ones that follow this one, considering how much it seems we're liking this one. The setup for this is tied around the search for the Holy Grail, right? And I feel like that's the other thing that helped with, at least for me, the connecting to the story in terms of, like you mentioned, I think with Temple of Doom was like, oh, there's a stone from a village and cool, we're gonna do some stuff with it, I guess. And here there was just very strong thing. We see it from the beginning with Indy's father, really focused on this is a very important thing that they've been trying to figure out for 40 plus years. Where are we going to find the Holy Grail? And I think that kind of connection to it really helped.
It created a line, right? Like even from the very beginning, you see the Grail diary that's being written in. And that's one thing that, I brought up when we were watching is there's so much foreshadowing in this. From different aspects due to the diary, due to a couple other different things that happen. So from like the very beginning, there is a drive towards the Grail. There's a reason that they're going towards the Grail. So obviously they set up his dad's obsessed with it. And so of course he would have, signed up for the original mission. So Indy very much, he's going for the Grail and there's the archaeologist in him that's going for it. But at the end of the day, he's trying to save his dad. So he has a reason why he's doing it. And he has the secondary reason of being just an archaeologist and the quest, right? But there's a reason for everything that's happening. Whereas in Temple of Doom, and I know probably don't want to spend half this talking about Temple of Doom, but it goes to show why this one works so well is because in Temple of Doom, there wasn't a solid reason for him to do what he's doing. The reason why everything happens is so happenstance. He, goes to a bar, ends up on a plane that's owned by the guy who he's trying to stiff or whatever, falls out of the plane, ends up in a random village. The random village happens to have mystic stones that he happens to know about, that he goes on a journey in order to try to recover for some reason because he wants to save this village that I guess he feels like he owes. So all the stuff that just happens, and it doesn't really feel like much of it is his choice. Like he's not guiding the story. This one, there's elements where things are kind of pushing him in certain directions, but he's still making choices based off those situations and guiding the story. It feels like he's actually a participant in it. And I will say, looking at the writers between the three movies, the Temple of Doom movie distinctly had writers that it's very obvious that they were probably collaborators for George Lucas specifically, because they had written stories for Howard the Duck and American Graffiti. Whereas this movie, I think like one of the writers, so I think he also wrote The Phantom, if you ever watched that movie with Billy Zane. But then he also, like, you have a writer for The Color Purple, was also a writer on that. So like it feels like more Spielbergian collaborators for the first and the third movie, and more George Lucas collaborators for the second movie. So I think that's where you're seeing the difference in the writing, because it does show in the way the characters interact. Yeah, there's awkward love scene in Venice, but the characters are well established and well defined for the most part. And one of the things I brought up was knowing the Elsa story, watching the glances and her emotions that occur. It's like watching a Saw movie. If you go back and watch it, you can find those little hints that show you, oh, you should have known all along that Bruce Willis was dead the entire time, right? The same kind of thing I think applied to this. If you know who she is and you're watching this from the beginning, you see those glances she gives, those little, hints of, her story and where she came from and who she actually is. It definitely peeks through. So good writing, right?
But also, I mean, at the end of the day, I think I'm going to say good acting for what this film is, to buy into what everyone was doing. I even from the get-go, this is a little thing, but it's the things that stand out to you, right? We were in the library. We're still at the beginning of the film here. So much has already happened before we even get to this scene, and how we were all thinking about, like, wow, he's just destroying this marble or whatever's there, and
it's like 4 inches thick.
Yes, that he's just wrecking apart so they can get into this tomb. But it was those little moments that felt so neat, and like there's a lot of gags throughout the film, but they all felt great.
Yeah, they weren't forced. They were like, him destroying the thing with the stamp, right? With Albert Einstein, librarian guy. A lot of those kind of gags just play into the situation, and they're just great. Like the airplane scene where his dad shoots the tail, like they just feel organic to it. They never feel forced. Yeah. Whereas talking about Temple of Doom again, you got all like whatever gags that occurred in that one just felt childish in a way and weren't well thought out and didn't flow organically with the story or the characters. There were a couple moments, to be fair, and I guess a character that we definitely want to talk about, or at least I want to talk about, is Henry Jones Sr., Sean Connery, the late great. Sometimes his was a little bit goofy. Like his character kind of flips sometimes, where he's a very goofy, almost like a Mr. Magoo type character or whatever. And then sometimes he's a little bit serious and stern with, his son. Like he had these moments where like he'd be happy that Indiana Jones was using a flagpole as like a jousting spear. And then whenever he used the rest of the jousting spear to blow up the motorcycle next to him, he was upset or
like, this is unacceptable.
Like this is beyond me. I'm going to check the time. Right. So like you had those kind of moments that kind of played into, and again, the acting, right. But I mean, to me, you have to talk about Sean Connery. It's such a big part of this movie.
Yeah. I don't think we can not mention like what a left turn having a movie like this, like having his father be like a buddy cop type of situation. It's like, can you imagine like James Bond or like Schwarzenegger's dad, like showing up and he's like, okay, like for Commando 3 or, like whatever, like Terminator 3. Okay. It's your dad showing up and, let's go do a buddy cop with your dad. And it totally works. Like, doesn't it sound kind of crazy to do something like that?
But now that you're saying it, I kind of want it to happen now. And like, it's so funny too, because if you think about it, these two guys were the, air quotes sex symbols of their generations, right? You very much have James Bond and you have Indiana Jones / the type of characters, you have Han Solo, and like, you just have these two actors that are in that kind of, like, it works somehow, even though we did comment about the accent.
Right.
Like,
I enjoyed it.
I mean, it's not him without it. So it's
I know, but then that just calls into question like Indy's origins, why he doesn't have one.
It didn't, for some
because
reason,
he was raised by his mother.
Was he though? Because River Phoenix seemed pretty young.
Okay, you're just stretching here. That is,
or I guess he was raised alone, right? So.
Again, I think it was just one of those things where they just happened to get Sean Connery and you let the man do his thing. You don't worry about the actual fitting into the world.
Right.
But you hit on a key point. I mean, that relationship is so huge that you call it buddy cop, but it's
I wouldn't know
even
what else
better
to
than that,
call it.
right?
It's more, it's kind
Mhm.
of like, when the two of them get together and go on their adventure together.
Well, it makes you believe you want to see the stories about his dad
Right.
in a way. You know what, that obsession, and really because it flows to Indy, same type of obsession.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I liked is that, and there was a lot of it that was like side by side kind of. I mean, like, obviously, like, Indy was taking the lead, but it wasn't like the damsel in distress type of thing where, like, hey, like, you stay over here and we'll go do this kind of thing here, It's,
Well, you know what I found the funniest part is the fact that, and again, because of their relationship as father and son, um, we're used to seeing Indiana Jones as like strong, confident, suave,
Mhm.
like a man of action. And there are
yeah.
these times that you could tell he was, again, to the credit of the writers and the actors, he would do something and it was obvious he was trying to get approval from his father.
Mhm.
He was trying to go, look at that
Yeah.
cool thing I just did. And when he didn't get it, you could kind of see how the relationship had been. And like, they're not spoken words. They're literally just expressions that Harrison would give, in that moment. And you knew what it was supposed to be. And
Mhm.
it feeds so well into the story and the progression of the two characters as they go through this adventure. And you're right. Like it is a buddy cop. It is an interesting thing because you do come off stuff like Temple of Doom or even Raiders, where they very much had like the, the co-character or whatever would be the damsel in distresses, unfortunately. And in this one,
Mhm.
like, yeah, he did have to be rescued. And there was moments where like he was more bumbling and in the way than anything else. But, there was moments where his intelligence and his capabilities were very paramount to progressing the story.
Mhm.
Sure.
Did Bobby, how'd you this is probably a stretch of a question, but let's go with it. How'd you feel about the love
Oh.
triangle?
Yeah, no, I mean, the love triangle was something else. I mean, clearly there for like, I mean, Matt, when you mentioned like the kind of awkward like love scene in the beginning, I was like, well, even that kind of like had like a bigger story purpose where it just wasn't in there for like just a gratuitous scene and then they move on and never mention it again. It was kind of like that dig, like, hey, I was just as good as the next guy. Oh, I was the next guy, kind of thing. So it's like, and then also it shows her character, right? Like she's willing to do whatever it takes to get whatever she wants.
I guess I wanted to see her seduce the old man. Like, what was going on there?
I
She's
mean, it
like,
probably would have been better if, like, if it would have been funnier if she was talking to him during the like,
oh
during the
yes,
like interrogation
Or
scene,
yeah, very
basically.
much like that Spider-Man meme where they're pointing at each other or
Right.
whatever. Like literally like she's
Yes.
talking and
yes.
you don't know who she's talking to.
Mhm.
Right. Right.
Which they pulled a little bit of that
Yeah.
as she whispered
Yeah.
into Indy's ear.
He was like, "Thank you."
Right.
Yeah.
It was quite wonderful.
But again, we move
Yeah.
from these moments where you feel through those things, and then the next thing you know, okay, we get this extended motorcycle chase. And back to the jousting that you mentioned, to now they have to go to Berlin because they really need to get the journal back. Where we have a scene where I said was very uncomfortable because he comes face to face with Hitler, and I was just like, yeah, I still don't like this, and not because they didn't work. I just am like, yeah, this feels gross just because of what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things where like, because I looked it up. This one takes place in 1938, so this is literally the year before
Okay.
everything hits the fan.
Oh,
So
gee.
whereas like I feel like in the first one you had these characters that were obviously Nazis in the first one, but they were more caricatures than anything else. And so you had those characters in it. This one actually just kind of drove home the fact that, this was, Nazi Germany
Mm-hmm.
during that time.
Mm-hmm.
And it established that, because I feel like in a lot of movies, it's very easy to use Nazis as the bad guys or whatever, because clearly
Mhm.
they were.
Right.
But are. And I feel like it did something that it needed to do. It established a personal reason why Indiana Jones and Senior had an actual problem with them. Cause like, again, stuff hadn't quite hit the fan yet. So like, yeah, people weren't very comfortable with them, but they were still on that fringe. They weren't quite at that level where they started World War II and, you know, committed atrocities. They weren't quite there yet, at least publicly. And so it showed the ignorance of the Nazi party. And the reason why these two would hate them is the fact that they do burn books and they do, you know, sequester science and they try to kill thinking and stuff like that. Like the things that they as archaeologists and historians thrive on is the very thing that the Nazi party is opposed to. So they have personal reasons for disliking the Nazis, not just because Nazis bad. They have a reason why they're diametrically opposed to their point of view. And I felt like that was a good scene to set up. I feel like there was the comedy aspect of, like I brought up, like there is a picture somewhere in this world of Indiana Jones and Hitler next to each other, floating around, you know.
And isn't this why they, I mean, ultimately we know Elsa was a bad guy, but they kept giving us these moments where they wanted us to question it, right? And especially they gave us that during the book burning.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like they were trying to humanize her a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe to make her seem not as bad.
Right.
I don't know if maybe that was a reshoot or maybe that was maybe somebody was watching and saying, oh, it's not working. It makes the end sequence a little bit less, you know, believable. You know, why would Indy save her if she was such a bad person? So maybe, because I mean, if you really follow history, you know, there were scientists that were part of the party or whatever that, you know, weren't, you know, part of the party. Like they were scientists and they were kind of forced into it. And, you know, to some extent, you know, there is, okay, well, I'm German and yeah, this happens to be the dominant party and I'm a scientist and like all this stuff that plays into it. So I think they were trying to kind of indicate that like she wasn't a willing participant as much as, oh crap, what was his name? Donovan, who was like the spy, American spy, whatever you want to call him. It kind of felt like they're trying to set up like, hey, she's not really that bad. She just happens to be Austrian because she was Austrian. And she was part of this, but she was more interested in the Grail and what it was going to do rather than who she was getting help from. Right.
They kind of like tried to explain her at the end, didn't they? They said like something like she really didn't understand. She didn't believe.
Oh yeah. Believed in the Grail, not the swastika or something like that. I can't remember who said that, but I think that it plays into it fairly well. I think it also plays into the thing that we brought up during the very end sequence when Donovan's choosing the Grail and her intentions behind it, because she didn't care for them. So, you know, it was just a means to an end. And just like Bobby said, right, she'll do anything to get her end goal. This was just one of them. So was she a tragic character? Yeah, but
Still a Nazi.
was she what the rest of them were? Probably not.
Right.
Well, we could talk about what leads up to that end scene, so we can get to the very extended tank scene. We got tanks, folks. It's running over stuff.
I mean,
it was a lot.
It
just felt like it kept going and going.
But would you want to see the Fast and the Furious version of that tank sequence?
Oh, I mean,
or like the tank,
like a 200 mile an hour.
The tank is being ramped into an airplane or something like that to destroy the airplane.
Okay. I'm kind of here for this. Go on.
I mean,
well, the Dial of Destiny is coming up.
I mean, the sequence itself, I think was fine. I think there were just at some point that I was like, oh, it's still going. Like, I was feeling it up until a certain point, and I should have wrote down where it kind of felt it. I think I might have said it while we were watching. I was like, oh, this seems kind of long. It's like, it just felt like it should have ended a little bit earlier. Whereas like, I feel like the motorcycle chase was paced about right. That one, it felt like it really needed to end like 10 minutes sooner, maybe.
Well, by the time he's getting pinched by the rock, on the side of it, and then it's falling off, it's just like, okay, thankfully we're finally done here.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, I could ask this. So we're 3 in. We're 3 in. I want a preliminary rank right now, Bobby. Where are you putting this movie of the 3 of them?
This one's clear number 1 for me, and then Raiders, then Temple.
Oh, Temple's getting wrecked.
But Temple's a close third.
A close third. What?
Oh, goodness gracious. Matt, I'm guessing it's the same order.
It's the same order. I think that if you ask that question after Crystal Skull,
I'm very excited to ask it after Crystal Skull.
I'm going to have a much harder time for the battle for last. Probably. I can feel it. Like this one's always been my favorite. I don't know if it's because the first one, but watching it again after watching the previous two, it's very obvious that everything was working in this one. Whereas there was a lot of stuff not working in Temple of Doom and an occasional thing in Raiders that didn't quite work. Like I feel like Raiders had a couple too many set pieces. It was going around a little bit too much. Like I could have done without like the boat scene in Raiders. I feel like that wasn't really necessary. I think you could have cut that scene and literally had just the Nazis got the Covenant and he was chasing them and then it ends up on the island or whatever. And it would have been perfectly fine. I didn't really need that whole sequence to occur. Whereas I feel like, I don't know if, the tank sequence could be shorter. But nothing was egregiously like making me dislike it in this movie. So it's the gap between this one and Raiders, like, is a little bit, and then the gap between Raiders and Temple is, the size of the Crescent Moon Valley or whatever. So
yes, there it is. Well, I'll ask because I do want us to revisit this particular question. I want to talk through the final sequence just in terms of the puzzles that Indy had to solve and sort of the booby traps that he had to go through. I remember in my youth being very impressed by all of that, and even right now, as cheesy as a leap of faith may have looked, I still love the idea behind everything that they walked through to get into the area of the Grail so they can make their decisions on what Grail they should get. But it just the back and forth with, even though it's like his dad was telepathically communicating with him, he'd be like saying the exact same things Indy was saying as he's going through it. I loved each one of those moments.
If I had any complaints about it, it was being a little bit finicky about the fact that, like, the knight had nothing else to do. He couldn't have cleared the cobwebs and swept.
No, he's just sitting back there watching people's heads roll.
He's just like reading the same book over and over again for 700 years. Like, my man, like, at least write some books or something. Like, he's got to add some bangers in there after 700 years.
Would you have, if you walked into that place, would you have thought, well, maybe I guess it is my time to take up this mantle and take 700 years just chilling in a cave? Would you do it?
No. Well, I don't know. Do I have television and the internet, or?
I guess you do get to walk in with your cell phone. Yes.
Maybe for like a little bit, maybe, I don't know. Like, I feel like you could totally like, use it as like a glitch code or whatever. Like, okay, let me get my best scientists, put them in this cave and have them figure out the cure to cancer or whatever. Like, you need to keep drinking from this water that magically spills up into this little basin and drink it.
I'd probably be trying to figure out, how do we move the seal since we just can't cross the seal's threshold?
I mean, that's the question that I brought up was like, you can't be immortal outside of it, but like, if you were just trying to get the Grail out, could you not have just bolted, and taken it out? Or would it have been like literally like the earth would have kept following you, like trying to swallow you up? There would have been like a huge rip in the ground.
There'd be some Final Destination stuff happening. Yeah. That's bad, I think.
But
like, basically, like, can you go in there, like, drink the water, then leave and come back later and drink again, and then?
Well, that's just it. Did Indy and his dad get a little bit of extended life because they drank of the water?
They were slightly immortal for 10 minutes.
Right.
they gained 10 minutes of immortality, and so they're 10 minutes younger.
Yeah, what is the ratio of liquid that you must drink while in the place to
all right.
Life extension?
So if you drink from the Grail, but don't swallow and keep it in your mouth and you leave, can you slowly drink? Like, or is it just the effects of immortality just within that? Because like, you can't take the Grail, but what about the sense of immortality? Like, is that only restricted to the cave and the seal as well? Like, the moment after they pass over the seal, does it just go away?
Well, okay, we know that knight was 700 years old,
yeah,
or 700 plus years old.
Yeah.
How do you feel about his condition? Would you be happy 700 plus years in that particular condition? He fell over because he couldn't swing his sword properly anymore.
Well, my question, like, was he that old when he got to the Grail, or does he like slowly age?
He's been drinking the whole time.
I mean, that would be well, I don't know. Like, if you drink once and you stay within the seal, you would stay. That was actually the question I was wondering, is like, you're not actually immortal, you're actually slowly aging. Like, it's very
Right. That's
slow.
because that's what it seemed like to me, unless he was that age when he got in there.
Unless, and this is where like you could go into the really deep, dark stuff. Did he have like an existential crisis at one point? And he was like, I'm going to step past the seal. Like, maybe he left for a little bit. And then like,
oh, he had like a dawn, or he drank from the wrong cup just a little bit, and then like got old and was like, oh no, gotta drink from the right one real quick.
It was just like, maybe like he was like, after 700 years, he's like, I'm done with this. Like, kind of like very much like Tom Hanks' character in Castaway. Like, he just got so lonely after 700 years that he was like, but then like right before, he was like, oh no, I can't do it. He like got his sense of loyalty and duty back, and he was like, oh, gotta drink the cup. But now I'm like, 90 years looking or whatever. I don't know. I'm white, so that's how I'm going to look at age 50. So that's probably how old he actually was. I'm more bothered by the fact that he spoke perfect English, even though he was supposed to be like a French knight. But
let these actors live.
He's like, why are you Scottish? Why aren't you French? But I don't question the Grail and its ability of immortality, but the French accent not being there.
Yeah,
that's the line.
That's where we draw the line. Bobby, you telling people to watch The Last Crusade?
Yeah, man, watch this movie. It's good. I definitely say watch it. I think I enjoyed it. I'd watch it again and again.
Oh, I thought there was one more coming. Matt, would you?
In my immortal cave for all.
Oh, there it is. With electricity, television, and cell phone access.
Right.
Matt.
Just put a solar panel on the top of the cave. You're good.
Oh, that's a great idea.
It's funny. Like, I feel like this movie is more watchable to the younger generation than the previous two would be. I feel like you could probably watch this, and maybe it's because it's newer, right? There's, nearly a decade gap between, the first movie and the third movie. I feel like you could watch this in the same breath you'd watch National Treasure or something like that. And I feel like it's just as entertaining. I enjoyed watching it again. I think that this is definitely a movie I could pop in, every few months to a year or whatever, and totally enjoy it the same way that I enjoyed it the first time. Like I said, I would love to see it in theaters. If tomorrow you said this is going to be in theaters on a huge screen and you're like, you want to go? Like, hell yeah, let's go. Let's go watch it again.
Yeah. I'm thinking, even with the order that we're listening and knowing that we have a fourth movie to follow up in, I'd almost say, like, if you're going to watch any of them and you knew at the end of the day you could only watch one indie film, this is the one. I wouldn't even worry about the other two so far. I wouldn't even worry about it. Like, this is, to me, it's a starter. It's far more interesting, and none of the creepiness that we get in the first film that I kept being distracted by. Damn Indiana Jones. Damn Lucas. Damn Spielberg.
Did you get ride nostalgia on this one too?
That's a very obvious thing to harken back to the Disney ride. But yes, obviously watch this particular film. It was fantastic. As always, thank you for listening, and ask yourself, why do you seek the cup of Christ? Is it for his glory or for yours? Dun, 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 dun.